Episode 139, when your husband is sick. Hello, my friends, back this week. And again, just like I said last week, I can't believe we got this long without having this conversation. I'm very much looking forward to your emails and your messages and, hearing back from you and those of you on Meaningful Minute, your comments down there about your thoughts about this topic, because I just know from my experience coaching that this is a hot button trigger issue for a lot of women. And often their response is like, they're shocked by their own response. Okay. So I'm going to get into this, but I'd really love to hear from you. I did have one person reach out who was like, no, it's not a problem. He takes care of me when I'm sick and I take care of him. So one question I do really want to ask, and so just find whatever way you like to communicate with me, whether you want to email me, Kayla@KaylaLevin.com, or you can comment if you're reading this somewhere that has comments. I'd love to hear from people who are newlyweds and people who are married longer about like specifically knowing whether you're a newlywed, whether you're in your first couple, let's say your first couple years, and or whether you have kids yet, versus whether you're married longer, and then how you feel, how you tend to react when he gets sick. Because I'm starting to develop maybe a theory that maybe this comes along more once we have kids or our lives are for other reasons possibly getting very busy. As I was thinking about it, I'm thinking probably not like anyone in Shana Rishona in the first year of marriage that I coached on this, having this type of response. More women who've been married longer, and definitely like some of the managing the house when he's down for the count becomes one of the issues that comes up. It's part of the sort of the response. So either way, it's definitely a long time coming. It's something I've been coaching on many times with many different women. So I want to start by saying, if you go bonkers when he gets sick, you're not alone. Like definitely a normal response. So I also want to preface this by saying I'm not discussing serious illness, and psychologists agree with this. There's a different response, there's a different mental response when it's serious illness, because it's going to arouse a lot of compassion and possibly emergency mode and all sorts of other things. Is completely different conversation. So we're talking about regular, just getting sick. He's for sure going to get better. We're not actually worried. Although this could apply also to chronic illness, right? Guys who have allergies or stomach issues or things like that. I've experienced clients who've had sort of similar frustrations with that type of sickness. It's kind of all in the same basket. So here are some of the really common reactions that I've heard of. So number one, getting really annoyed with him. Just annoyed, just like really noticing a lot of thoughts like, I can't believe it, like again, or even the way he's being sick, like he's too cold, or he like needs too much tea. Like it's just like this like annoyance. Okay. And I'm not saying any of this is rational, and it's for sure not recommended, but this is what people are noticing themselves doing. Getting angry or resentful. Okay. And then of course, when we're feeling that way, sometimes we behave that way. So sometimes women will come to me and they're like, I'm a monster when my husband is sick. Like, I don't know what's going on. I am so mean to him. Okay. So behaving in either of those ways, right? From our annoyance or from our anger, not wanting to take care of him, right? Noticing like my normal, doesn't make sense. Like, I love this guy. He's not feeling well. I should want to take care of him. I don't want to. What's going on here? And another one that comes up a lot is judging him, right? If when I had this exact same virus last week, I was still doing carpool. So how come he's not? Or, anything along those lines, right? So here you get these really are wonderful women. These are wonderful, nurturing, caring women who generally would be concerned for somebody who's sick. And there's just something about it being their husband that just like trips a wire in their brains. And it's all different. So we're just going to explore that today. Okay. So here's some of the main things that I see coming up, because so all of our emotions come from our thoughts, right? So if you're feeling annoyed, there's a thought that's running in your head, like, he shouldn't be so sniffly, whatever it is that's like causing the annoyance. If you're feeling angry or resentful, that's coming from a different thought. So resentful might be when I was sick, I still had to, make sure dinner was on the table and he doesn't, and this is totally unfair. So I might be feeling resentful based on that. Okay. So when someone comes to me and they're talking to me about how they're feeling super annoyed or super resentful or any other emotion, I'm always trying to figure out what's the story that is fueling that emotion. So I want to share with you some of those really common stories that are fueling those emotions we just discussed. And there could be other ones. These are just sort of like the heavy hitters that I've seen so far. So number one is annoyance based on different experiences. So this could either mean, like I said before, we had the exact same virus. I had it and then he had it, and it took him twice as long to get better. Definitely something I've heard, right? And I've heard this also just in social environments, right? Like you probably had some of these conversations. Or, again, like when I did it, but I dragged myself out of bed and I did all these things and I still made sure I had my own food and like he needed to be taken care of. So annoyance based on like, I experienced it one way. I'm extrapolating that he's probably experiencing exactly the same symptoms and the same experience that I had. And so now I'm feeling really annoyed by that. Okay. Which is basically some version of he's doing it wrong. This is like not the right way to be sick. Okay. It's okay. Our brains are like crazy monkeys sometimes, and they just give us thoughts and we just don't have to take them that seriously. Okay. But that would cause some annoyance. If I'm thinking like he's just doing this whole sick thing wrong and I have to deal with it, I'm going to feel annoyed. All right. Number two is either frustration or overwhelm that now you have to handle everything yourself. Okay. So some women are just annoyed. He's doing it wrong. This is ridiculous. Or I forgot this one. I told him that he shouldn't go skiing without a jacket or whatever the thing is that caused him to get sick. Right. So that's the annoyance one. Number two is like, it's not about him being sick. I have to handle this all by myself. I have no idea when he'll be back online. I'm so overwhelmed. I have so many things to manage already. And now all the things that he normally helps me with, he can't help me with. Okay. So that is also going to create a negative reaction in how you're showing up with him. And also in dealing with what's on your plate when you're just feeling super frustrated or super overwhelmed. Because anytime we're thinking like, oh my gosh, I've got way more than I can handle, our brains believe us. Our brains are super literal. So then our brains are going to be like, oh, we can't handle it. So we're going to ignore all the solutions. We're not going to ask for any help. We're going to spend a ton of time spinning out and just like, I don't know, checking WhatsApp messages or something because we can't handle it anyway. So let's just get rid of this horrible overwhelmed feeling, right? And our brains just don't deal with issues when we think we can't deal with them. Because again, they take us so literally. So when we get into that place of frustration and overwhelm, then sometimes that ends up getting redirected towards our husband because it's just much easier to be angry at him than to feel hopeless and overwhelmed with our life. The last one I think is really interesting, but I think this is really common, which is an irrational, deep fear about him being sick, life without him, right? Starting to worry about like, what if something actually did happen to him? This will usually turn pretty quickly into annoyance or resentment for the same reason that I just said. It's much more comfortable to be annoyed with him or mad at him than to be scared that you might lose him. So even if it's a cold, right? Even if it's not like really a thing that you need to be worried about it, if it's triggering something in you of like, I know I really rely on him. I don't really know how I would handle life by myself. And then that fear gets triggered. So then you might very quickly just redirect to annoyance or anger, which can sometimes be these like secondary emotions. We go to them because they feel much more comfortable than spending time in that fear. Okay, so those are three of the main stories that are kind of creating this negative response. So it makes sense. He gets sick and you're just thinking, I'm completely overwhelmed, or you're thinking, I'm terrified about life. Like, what if something really actually happens to him? Or you're thinking, he's doing this whole sick thing wrong. This is ridiculous how he does sick. It's just not how you're supposed to be sick. So it makes sense. Like, if those are your thoughts, if that's what's going through your head, you didn't intend to put it there. You didn't plan on thinking that. You're going to be a little negative with the guy in bed, right? That's just, I shouldn't say it that way. That sounded like an innuendo. You're going to be a little negative with the sick guy, right? Sitting on the couch, right? So understandable. Those stories are creating the emotions that's creating how you're showing up with him, how you're talking to him, how you're choosing to take care or not take care of him in that moment. All those decisions are being fueled by those emotions. For the next part, I just want to talk about why that might not be the best plan for you. Just in case you were wondering, in case you were like, no, maybe I should stick with this. Maybe I should just be annoyed with him. Like, why should I change? Like, maybe I do think he's doing it wrong. So number one is we know that stress weakens the immune system. So if what I want is for him to get healthy and I'm busy yelling at him or not, just sort of being a generally stressful person to be around, I'm actually kind of sabotaging my goal of him getting better. Right? Because I'm here weakening his immune system, which, I don't know that we have any like very clear correlational studies here of, cranky wives and how long it takes guys to get better. But knowing that stress weakens the immune system, we want his immune system to be nice and strong. Maybe the best thing to do would not be to be stressful. Okay. Number 2, and I love this type of science. This is like the type of thing that I get really excited about, which is he might actually be experiencing the exact same virus in a completely different way. So we know that men and women experience many diseases in very different ways. Any of you who've learned, and hopefully most women have heard about the fact that women don't experience heart attacks in the classic symptoms. The classic symptoms are the male heart attack. A female heart attack usually comes with very different symptoms than what a man experiences. I think nausea is one of those symptoms, right? There's the weakness, not the like elephant on your chest experience that men describe. So we know from science that sometimes when we have a disease, it doesn't feel or express itself the same way in the male body as it does in the female body. And I'll just read you one thing that I found from this article in Time. It says, in a recent study published in the Journal of Brain Behavior and Immunity, adult male mice, yes, I know your husband's not a mouse, displayed more symptoms of sickness than females when they were exposed to bacteria that cause an illness with symptoms similar to the flu. The males also had more fluctuations in body temperature, fever, and signs of inflammation, and took longer to recover. So the mice weren't just acting more sick, right? They actually had higher inflammation. And so there's different theories, that I think scientists are working towards of like why that might be, maybe different receptors, maybe their immune system response is actually stronger. And so part of what we experience when we're sick is the immune system response that creates some of the symptoms. The sickness creates some symptoms and the actual response creates the symptoms, right? So if their response is stronger, then that actually means that they are experiencing more discomfort. The exact same virus is expressed differently in his body. So he's experiencing a worse thing than what you experienced. Now, again, I know your husband is not a mouse, but I think that this is enough, especially combining that with the information about, understanding that different diseases appear differently in men and women, to realize that it's a pretty big leap to assume that this is what it felt like when I had the cold. And so now he has the same cold, which again, we're just guessing that it's the same cold, although you can be pretty sure if you live in the same house, right? He has the same cold. And so he should be experiencing the same as me. He should get over it as fast as me. This was only one study that I found. There were others that they kind of all had the same gist, that there is, what to say about men experiencing sickness more strongly than women. The other reason this might not be the best plan to go into wacko mode when he's sick is it's probably just not how you want to show up. Right. And that's usually what my clients lead with, right? Like, I don't like how I'm acting when he's sick. So what do we do? Okay. So I don't want to show up this way. I don't want to stress him out. I realize that maybe he's experiencing it differently. I don't really want to be like super on edge. Also, it's not fun for you, even like in the slightest, to be feeling so negative every single time he gets sick. So what do we do about it? So number one is, if you're really, really new to my work, then I want you to really just consider what I was saying about understanding that the stories that you're telling yourself is what's creating the emotion. Because what we tend to think is, him being sick is why I'm frustrated. Him being sick is why I'm overwhelmed. No, it's not him being sick. It's him being sick. And I have 2 kids under the age of 3. That's why I'm overwhelmed. And I work a full-time job. But the truth is that those facts don't cause emotions. Okay. The facts of your life do not create your experience of it. It's always the way you're framing it for yourself. Okay. And this does not mean, by the way, I never, never, never want you to try to frame something in a way you don't believe, to frame something in a way that's not true for you. However, at the same time, when you get onto yourself and you start watching the way that you're thinking, you'll notice, oh, That's why I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm spending my whole day thinking I can't handle this. This is too much, and thinking I'm so overwhelmed. Maybe that has something to do with it. Starting to watch and get onto yourself is really the first step. Because as long as I go around thinking that him being sick is the reason I'm feeling overwhelmed, as long as he's sick, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Right? I have no like autonomy in my own emotional experience. I'm just totally giving it away. So I don't want that for any of you. For those of you who've been doing this work a little bit longer and you understand how to sort of bridge yourself from the way that you're thinking now into another thought that's equally believable, right? Of like, maybe it's just something like, I'm committed to showing up for him right now, even if it's hard for me. It might not be like, I am going to bond with my sick husband because I love him so much and I care so much and I want him to feel better. If you can think that, that's beautiful. If you've been in the other thought process, that might be a bit of a stretch for you. But you might think, I'm committed to showing up and taking care of him. That might be enough for you to just kind of get into the behavior that you want to, and deciding that we're committed to something kind of creates that inner strength that allows us to deal with some of those negative emotions that might be coming up. Okay. But the last thing I want for you is like maybe the most advanced one, like as we're stepping our way up, is to realize that when we have a trigger, and I don't mean trigger in the like deeply psychological sense, like somebody with, a trauma or something like that. I just mean a trigger as in like, oh, I know every time he gets sick, I like immediately am feeling overwhelmed and frustrated. Like it just happens so fast. It's like a very, very well-traveled neurological circuit. I don't even notice the thought. I'm like already there. Okay. So that's the way in which I'm using the word triggered here. The trigger itself is not really the problem. Okay. So what I see for some of you is that you're feeling overwhelmed and upset, and then you immediately go to like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I'm doing this. This is ridiculous. He's just sick. I always get like this. I don't know how to get out of this. So you have this whole story over what's going on in your brain. Excuse me. You've got the thoughts in your brain, and then you've got like the commentary on the thoughts in your brain, which is not any better. It's not any better of a place to be hanging out than the original thoughts. Okay. So I want you to know that the trigger itself isn't a problem. It's electrical activity happened in your brain. A sentence, words went through your brain. It caused an emotion. It's only when we start freaking out about it, or when we don't notice it and we believe it, that it's a problem. Those are the only times that it affects us negatively. You can be triggered and you can just move through it. My favorite version is to just notice it and laugh at it. Like I'm noticing all the annoyance coming up with my husband. Annoyance is usually mine. I'm noticing how annoyed I am with him. I'm noticing how I'm watching every little thing that he's doing, and I'm just making it all wrong. Like this is not how you should be doing sick. This is wrong. And I'm just laughing at myself. I'm laughing at my brain. My whole narrative isn't about the lower level narrative of like, why is he doing that? It's like, I've got like like the guys, I was just giving this analogy to a client today. Like, like the guys in the box in the Muppets. If you ever watched the Muppets, like there's like the two grouchy old men that are like talking about how bad the show is the whole time. Those are like my absolute favorite. I love them so much. So it's almost like we have like a little theater box watching our brain. Right. And so either the people in the little box watching our thoughts can be like, this is terrible. I can't believe she's judging him again. Or the people in the box be like, this is hilarious. Like she's judging him, like how many tissues he had. Like, what is this even happening right now? Like, who does that? Right. And so if I'm sitting there and I'm a place of like, this is so funny. Like, I can't believe this is happening. It's actually going to stop me from then acting out all of that. Right. Because then instead of my space being all about the annoyance, I'm actually kind of in this sort of like higher meta place of watchfulness and kind of like an entertainment, sort of like enjoying the whole like ridiculousness of what's happening in the brain. And then it just loosens and lightens the whole thing. Okay. So it's one of my favorite ways to get out of a trigger is to just watch it with like humor, or what works really well for some people is to watch it with compassion. Like, oh my gosh, sweetie, of course you're feeling really overwhelmed. You don't know how to do this yet. This is new territory for you. It's okay. Like you're going to figure it out. It's okay that you're feeling overwhelmed, but like, that's because you've got this story that you can't handle anything. And okay, I see what's happening here. I see why she's feeling overwhelmed. I see why this is happening, but we're going to be okay. We can do this. It's okay. Right. So like just a lighter way of approaching what's going on for you is going to allow you to just kind of have a lot more space to reimagine how you want to be showing up. Again, that is a higher level thing, right? If you haven't even gotten to the point of realizing that like the story is what's causing the emotion versus him being sick, I wouldn't necessarily jump all the way up to like the theater box, right? But just start with that. Just be like, okay, what are the stories I'm telling myself? Take out a piece of paper, write them all down, look at them. This is what's causing my emotional experience, not any of the facts of what's happening here. Okay, my friends, you can apply this, by the way, to any situation that you get very regularly triggered by. Okay, so you have a family member, an extended family member, an in-law family member that, you know, they always do this thing and it always drives you crazy. You can use any of those 3 tools to start stepping you out of your normal pattern, right? Because we can never control what they're doing, but we have complete control over our experience of it, of the way we're thinking about it, the way we're feeling about it, and the way that we show up in response. And so there's so much power to be had there. And it's really so freeing. It's so freeing to be spending your time focused on like what's within your control. And you'll realize you actually don't need them to make so many changes. You don't need much of them to be different. I don't need my husband to have less tissues or less tea needs or whatever the thing is for me to feel perfectly fine with him being sick. I don't need other people to change. And that's wonderful because I can't make them change. I haven't figured that out yet. Okay. All right, my friends. So hopefully you will all stay healthy and not need this episode. But in case you do, my pleasure. And I, again, would love to hear your responses, your thoughts, your additions. If we get enough, we'll just add another episode of this. And I will see you back here. I've got like a whole lineup of podcast episodes I'm so excited to share with you. So be back here next week. And I'm excited. I'm already, thrilled to share the next tool with you next week. Okay. Be well. Bye-bye.